Hello everyone, it's Cheryl Millett here, live at 5. Yes, it's Tuesday, day after Monday, but something came up. Somebody sent me something that I thought was worth putting out to you today versus tomorrow or the next day. And because live at 5 is at 5, I want to be consistent at least with the time. What days exactly beyond Monday, I will never know. But you might have been interested in the cryptic message I put for live at 5. It just kind of came to me. Let me just see, what did I write? Oh yes, what do pine cones have to do with the light? What do pine cones have to do with the light? Like anything, you have to be able to ask questions about that. And let me just get this over here because I actually, what do they call it? I actually have some visualizations here, just like show and tell, right? Show and tell, but in a different way. I think at first I'm going to start off with a couple of other things, and then I'm going to go into the pine cones and the light scenario, because there's questions we need to ask ourselves. That's what I'm going to say. So we think about questions, and we think about questions in the way we're going to ask other people, but let's ask ourselves a good question, or whatever question. What would a decent, intelligent, good, caring, what would people do in different scenarios? And the answer is probably going to come back so different depending on the scenario, but also depending on people's perspectives. And this gets into, again, worth repeating, that in all cases, really, as far as the good people go, not the government, not the controlling whoever, it's the good people want the same thing. They want safety. They don't want to die. I mean, maybe there's a fear of death, maybe there isn't, but here nor there, they don't want their elderly to get sick. They don't want themselves or people that they know or people that they love. And on both sides, so no matter what issue it is, usually if we think about good people in the scenario, they are going to be caring about a certain outcome, but their certain outcome is going to be based on what information. That's really what it gets down to, is they are looking at it through their, through their glass, through their window, because of the information that they have or choose to listen to, and maybe they're in a field that makes them think a certain way. So just to be remind ourselves that we're all on the same side. And when it comes to many of these things, I'm actually going to go through a couple of things. I'm going to leave the good stuff to last, as they say. So here we go. We have a few things. Once it seems kind of clear over these last whatever days, and in case weeks, but actually building is these protests. So I watched one in UK, which was kind of interesting because David Icke was there. So much passion. And another one I watched was in Montreal, and of course there's one in Toronto, and then Ottawa, and what other ones. But the idea is protesting is happening. It's not being covered by the mainstream media for some reason, maybe just not wanting to bring chaos into what they'd like to people to do. Instructions, directions, whatever is being given by who. And so that was kind of clear. Let me think, I'm going to go into these things. Yes, so huge crowds in Quebec, hundreds if not thousands of people are there. Then going into, this was a very short video and I posted the idea and listening to it. Yeah, I've already brought up the fact that CDC has said that only 6% of the total deaths of the number that was quoted, was like 153,000, were actually only COVID, if COVID only related that way. But this was interesting, and this is Dr. Fauci speaking, a very short one, and it's I think it's important to actually listen and watch video versus reading articles sometimes. I think it's more important to actually see it in context. So this is not unheard of in the way this event has been unfolding, where they'll say, even Fauci said, I can't remember what news it was on, but he had said, no, we don't need to wear masks. Only the people, the healthcare workers need to wear the mask. But in this case, he was speaking about asymptomatic carriers. And these asymptomatic carriers, well, which is, it's somebody who supposedly can be tested positive for COVID in whatever the test. You know where I sit with the test. It's not for infectious diseases to begin with. So let's just say the test comes up positive for the reason it does, and in the mind of, say, Fauci here, this person who's asymptomatic, what we've been told, or what came out at some point, or mainstream media, or reason why we're wearing these masks, is that asymptomatic people are carriers. And in this very short video, he actually says, no, they're not. No, they're not. Which might tie into the reason why they have dropped, the U.S. has dropped the quarantine for 14 days. That 14-day quarantine the U.S. has when you come back into their country. I think Europe is the same way from what I understand. They don't have the quarantine, but Canada still does, for whatever reason. But partially what that was based on was the studies that they did, however they did it, I don't know, regarding people on planes and what was happening thereafter. So this is plane travel and so forth. So in this short video, I'll post it below, Fauci says that no, if you're asymptomatic, you're not the carrier, you're not the spread. And partially what they say about positive tests out there is you may have that's why you're asymptomatic, very little traces or little amounts of the so-called virus. But I have to remind you, the virus is something that is contained in our body or comes into effect when we are needing to cleanse, detoxify, those kind of things. That's why it's more tied. That's why it's tied more to respiratory, if that makes sense. Cold, virus, respiratory, those kind of things. More will come in. So let me just see what else I have in here. We'll kind of wrap that up, and then I'm gonna go into, yep, that's the 6% one. Data tracker. You know, I've got way too many tabs open here, to tell you the truth. Yeah, quarantine. So yes, CDC drops. This is recently recommended. Yeah, drops the 14-day recommendation for travelers. And I was just browsing through those kind of things. And for those people who this is just up, so I will just say it. For anybody who wants neurotechnology or technology that actually, if you're stressed or if you have a lot of things going on with your neurological system, MS or anything like that, there's actually a special here for the Vox technology, if you're familiar with it. Just kind of say why I think this is important for people is because the timing of getting rid of their stress or the timing of working through their pain, very intense in the moment things are going on. And what would happen, like somebody, you know, massaging your shoulders, make you feel better, drop the shoulders, help you relax, and breathing, is that these socks actually press on, or the insoles would press on your bottoms of your feet, and there are senses, well, as we have pressure points, and it sends signals up to the brain and actually to calm the system. So it goes from, if people are familiar with parasympathetic and sympathetic, parasympathetic is where you know, you're just relaxed, you're calm, digestion works better, healing, everything about the body is in a better position. Whereas sympathetics, where you're running from the lion, and that just could be your thought process, not physically running from a lion, but just the stress, the mental stress, the emotions, the feelings, all of that. Well, these Vox socks, the technology of looking at them is actually to see how it calms the brain through the colors, through the imaging, of this technology that the doctors will use in medical situations where they can actually measure the different. It's no different thermography, right? Thermography, if it's very red, means there's a lot of heat, inflammation. This is what they do to scan the body for cancer. And then if it's cooler, like greens and blues, that's good. If it's black, that's not good either. Black is not good. We could think of black as dead, but the idea is a whole lot less vibration, not to make it very scary. But I will put the link down below because today is the last day. They're doing, you buy 3 products and you get 2 for free. So it's a really good deal. Some people do want to try them out, which makes a lot of sense. So go with your comfort zone on that. Let's get to one other item that I came across, and this was being at the farmer's market, and I was just exploring some information and wanted to see what was the lay of the land for the farmer's market, being there outside. So the bylaw 541 would not cover, and this is Toronto, it would only cover inside to wear masks, but not outside. But they had something on farmer's market, and interestingly enough, if they do the various measures such as distancing, such as the number of people in the space where the vendors are, and the vendors are, it's almost like they have a good space in between them. They're not right beside each other. And so they wouldn't have to wear the mask. But what information I got from, I sent this link with all the information to a couple of the vendors that had their emails, and just say, hey, you know, what's this about? Somebody piped back and said, well, we think it is, unless they misunderstood, it's due because it's a private property. And here's what I would say to that. I wouldn't think that matters one bit unless you have the insurance company putting the screws on you and saying that. So I haven't piped back into the conversation email as it's being there. Hello, sis. So let's get to the pine cone conversation here. And so I thank Arnie for sending that to me later last night and watching it, because it isn't something I thought about. But I will say, my husband's in construction, and he has one of these guns that have a red light that comes out, and I haven't asked him yet, but thinking that it's to measure temperature. So maybe you're in a burning house and you want to measure the door, see, oh, is there a lot of heat coming there? But I'm sure it's not that. So you know, he was, because something to do with temperature and screening, and he was taking it out and he was doing all the family member, and people would come in, and at a certain point I was going, this doesn't feel right. You know, you're holding this, looks like gun, and up to my head, and you're comfortable with pressing this button. So I said, no more. You know, no more. I don't want it. But interestingly enough, I got this video, and I've got to find this note because I want to do it. So here we go. We're familiar with pine cones, all kinds of sizes. This is a big one. But in our brain, we have what we call the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is, it's the shape of a smaller pine cone. Now, in my understanding around the omegas, and a particular part of an omega in the mammalian seal oil that I present on and distribute on and stuff, is that it, particular one not found in fish oil, DPA, is very nourishing for the pineal gland. So I'm very familiar with the pineal gland, and also from the metaphysical work and how important this pineal gland is. But guess what? Where we would be pointing it would be right in line. This is the pineal gland, the third eye, as they call it. And this was a nurse that came back. Let me just bring up here. I actually want to read a little bit of it to you. Slow, because I probably have too many tabs open. But this has everything to do. So yes, we're talking about the gun. I'm not sure if screening actually is using these guns, or whether screening in the school when the kids go back, this is how they're going to be screened. I don't know. I have to look at it, to tell you the truth, and to ask questions of what's going to happen. Here's what I want to say. You don't want to be doing a lot of that gun thing at pointing pin. This is a nurse. It's coming slowly but surely. I just want to get to where the nurse's comment comes in here. Yeah, so pineal gland right there, right there. It sets okay. So here we go. I'm just going to stop it here. So this is a nurse, and I've yet to kind of go and explore more about where this is, but she says, I'm really worried. I've started implementing the new protocols in force. One of my new tasks is taking and recording each person's temperature. I aim for the center of their forehead with my thermometer-shaped gun. I pull the trigger, wait for the beep, and record the temperature. And I always apologize to the person before proceeding and doing this a dozen or more times. I suddenly had a realization. So let me just go on to the next part here. You're going to have to wait. It's just kind of like a little video. So as soon as it goes over to the next page, what do they say? Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. I'm not sure. He's probably reading it too. So let's say here. I don't want to skip a page here as well. Let's see here. Okay. Are we being desensitized to be targeted at the head and also causing potential health issues by aiming an infrared ray to the pineal gland? So health issues, this is a nurse, by aiming an infrared ray to the pineal gland. So I started taking the temperature on the wrist, which turned out to be more accurate given the forehead is cooler than the wrist, and the results differ by more than 1 degree in some cases. And so that's for more research to determine, to kind of determine what's going on there. And I think this is actually on Instagram, so I'm going to, here we go. So I went to a shopping mall and people were lining up to get their temperature taken by an employee who obviously was not a medic and was not properly educated on how to correctly perform this procedure. Many were shocked when it was my turn, and I took the gun that was being directed at my forehead and redirected it to my wrist. I spoke softly but firmly and told the employee that an infrared thermometer must never be pointed at someone's forehead, especially babies and young children. In addition, it requires basic knowledge of how to properly read someone's temperature, i.e. placing a thermometer on the wrist or elbow fold is much more accurate and much less harmful. So I thought that was interesting to bring to our attention, because in many scenarios this whole temperature screening may have more to do with things than, I just don't like the whole gun part. It just doesn't seem right. But the pineal gland, it's the between the pituitary pineal gland and those glands in the brain, they're running melatonin and different things, sleep, and so much. And when it comes to calcification of that gland, which does happen through fluoride and different things like that, it can affect, and this is published research, you go look it up. I did this for my book in looking at toxicity and different things we have to be aware of, and calcification is one of them. It does a whole host of things to the body, unfavorable, and not something you can just put in a sling, put your feet up, rest, or anything like that. It goes beyond that, and we're talking about the brain, the control center, yes, the master glands there, or the glands that are there. So this is the thing about, the children having this, pointed to their head. Now, you have to understand some of the things I can explain here, try to briefly, is that children are in development. This is why it's almost insane to give infants freaking vaccines. So insane. Their immune system is in development. Their immune system is not ready for that. It's almost like taking a crawling baby and saying, you've got to walk right now, walk. It just ain't going to happen. They're not neurologically, and the development is not there to do that. There is an amount of growth that has to happen, maybe different things for different ways for different cases, but the idea is that. So it's really, really, I think, insane to give infants vaccinations. It doesn't matter if they're around other children. There's natural immunity that we have to hear, but there's the other thing about giving somebody to actually tell the immune system to do something that it's not ready for. In using something like this, an infrared or ultrasounds or anything, if you look this up, that's not healthy. It's not healthy to give children x-rays. It's not healthy to do it multiple times for anybody, anyway. Even with this whole cannabis thing, it's not healthy to give children, as much as they want to put them in a more comfortable place, maybe more comfortable for the parents or the caregivers, but the idea is they're in neurodevelopment, when I understand, up to the age of 24. But I can honestly say that we're turning over new cells all the time. So every one of us is susceptible to not turning over healthy new cells. Maybe it's not as quickly. Maybe some parts of our body aren't what we call priority, or it just can't get to it for the reasons it can't get to, because we don't, our unhealthy habits there. So I'm going to post that there. But the gun thing made me feel uncomfortable. It looked like a gun. Somebody could, and we're kind of doing that. But I really want to research more about. Kind of like the temperature things, wrist, inside the elbow as well. So here, as a medical professional, I refuse to directly target the pineal gland, which is located directly in the center of the forehead, and it's kind of like center of the brain, with an infrared ray. However, most people agree to go through this several times a day. There's so many people that are probably getting this temperature measured, and we can look into this more. We can question this, look into it more, and start to make that adjustment. No different than changing the tune from using social distancing to physical distancing. All these little things may be very crucial for our health, and it's not so much now, but if there's craziness that kind of happens, and this is how we're going to do temperature, and you're going to have your little baby and you're going to get a gun instead of the ear. So when I was talking to my friend Barb through Facebook, and she's a nurse, and typically I know, having my own children, it was the ear, right? It was an ear, and check the temperature there. But there's many ways to check a temperature. I'm not sure if infrared was well thought of, or there was the idea of being able to stand back 6 feet, but you could surely do that on the wrist, right? You could surely do that on the wrist. Anyway, more to explore there. I think it's necessary to explore that. So let me just go briefly, because there's also some verbiage here around the pineal gland in its terms of, and there's a little bit more here, but the pineal gland is a small pine cone shaped gland of the endocrine system, a structure of the diencephalon. It's kind of very faded, of the brain, diencephalon of the brain. The pineal gland produces a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin is good for your sleep, but also your sexual development. The pineal gland is composed of cells called, I can't see it because it's under the pause button here, and the cells of the nervous system called glial cells. The pineal gland connects the endocrine system with the nervous system, and in that it converts nerve signals from the sympathetic system we were talking about, of the peripheral nervous system. So that's a bit different. The peripheral nervous system, that's when you have to get all up in arms, and we're thinking cortisol, all that kind of things. Over time, calcium deposits build up in the pineal gland, and its accumulation can lead to calcification in the elderly. But I know it happens at different ages. Let's just see if there's something. No, that's it. But look it up. Look up pineal. There's more to it than just that. But it does look like a pine cone if you see the pictures. Smaller than this, of course, but it's pine cone. So that's what pine cone in the light had. That's what they have to do with these uses. This infrared light. But also, I've heard the pineal gland is very important for spiritual development and that kind of connection. They're talking about it from in that kind of description definition from the physical, but there's more to it than that, and you can explore that as well to learn, to be educated. And calcification comes in many forms, but it's hardening, and it is absolutely one of the stages of the 7 diseases. So if you have my book already, you'll see it's called a couple of different names, not just hardening, and you'll see how that comes into the stages of disease and how it affects and can affect all the various parts within our body. Hardening. That's the word, most of it, hardening of the arteries, because hardening of the pineal gland. So hardening, 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 and scar tissue can be hardening as well. So that's really all I wanted to come on. That's all. But I think that's a huge piece that we can explore, that we can question. It doesn't make sense on a couple fronts. I'm grateful for Arnie sending it to me. I hadn't seen anything about it. I just know my experience of my husband having one of these guns and pointing it at people's foreheads and not being comfortable with that. Something was off. Maybe it was just the gun thing. But anyway, any questions, comments, feedback, any additional information, post comments always if you're comfortable. And if you're not, private message me. Continue to keep sending videos and other pieces of information. I think it's great that we can come together and share bits of information so we can question together, we can research together, and we can stand together, and that's the kind of thing. So forget the divisiveness, but the coming together on various of topics so that we can just discuss it. But that's really it. That's all. I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we will see you live at 5 one of these days. Once again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. I've seen more and more shares recently, and please, if you're looking for a bit of information to read through or to watch videos, I will post the videos that I'm talking about down below. So any of the live at 5s will have various links, so plenty of links. That's where I'm putting most of them, although some of them I'll also put in its own post. But I've been tagging a bunch of people. Why? Because after some time people are not seeing them, and rightfully so. They do not like outside links according to the likes or sees or any of that. So that's why I've been doing that more and more, and I think that is just the way to go. So the only other thing is to follow or to come onto the page every once in a while. You have some good laughs from the puns. Actually, I have one today, and I thought it was interesting. So what did I do with it? Here it is. Now, kind of has to do with these events, to tell you the truth. And it might not do it justice me saying it as it would you seeing it. I think some of the words are punnier if you actually see the way they're spelt. But I'll try to do my best, and then I'm going to leave you with this, and until next time. So what's the difference between the bird flu and the swine flu? I'll give you a couple of seconds to actually ponder that. So what's the difference between the bird flu and the swine flu? Well, one requires treatment and the other an ointment. Anyway, groan, laugh, smile, laugh, whatever it is. But I'll post it up anyway so you can see it and for others to see it. Enjoy a good laugh, because laugh, it does lighten us up. And it means that we're not taking things too seriously, and at all times, unless it's extremely, now I'm not going to go there, it's important to find some lighten up, to not take things too seriously, and go from there. But always more to explain, but we won't go there. Take care, everyone. Thanks again. Bye for now. We'll see you again. Be calm, be peace, come together, and let's work together. Bye for now.